Hello everybody, welcome. I grew up using an IBM Aptiva back in 1994, 3 or 5, and one thing that I really appreciate about that computer, well, two things that really helped me get beginning with computers were first, the beautiful print documentation, high quality, very detailed. You must remember that that was before internet was widespread, so you really had to have papers with your computer to show you how it works, right? And the second one is the beautiful IBM BIOS Setup screens. They haven't changed at all in the last 20 some years, and any IBM compatible PC that you have, including servers, basically have the same configuration procedure. If you go to the BIOS here, after turning on the server, well, it always starts with the memory test and then a plain IBM logo for PCs or the System X logo for servers. Then if you have Ethernet boot or SCSI or SAS cards, then of course they initialize after the initial BIOS comes up. Then of course storage is detected and you will get back to the setup. So let's see. So, my Aptiva for 1994 had the same screen, same layout. My first X server from 2003 had the same setup, and now this server also has the same one. And I bet that even the latest IBM X servers before Lenovo took over looked the same. What's cool about it? First of all, you need to remember that back in 1994, people didn't really know how to use computers, so if you go to F1, you get a general help that shows you how to navigate the system, so it's really well documented. And now it's obvious, but back in the day, you really didn't know what page up, page down were for, or how to manipulate the screen. Yeah. Really cool. Then, with just F1, you get a specific item help. And here is very generic, of course, but in most cases it really helps you. It explains what the option is supposed to do, as I'm going to demonstrate further. Unlike most other BIOSes that I have seen that really have completely useless help systems. If you go to System Summary, you have the installed options. So here we have 2 gigs of RAM, CD-ROM, no other storage device. You need to remember that the hard drives are controlled by the SAS card. DDR2 memory, I think this one doesn't come with ECC. And no mouse installed. And I think this option refers to PS2 mouse. Go to processor summary, then you have the details of the CPU, right? Here it was before the quick path interconnects was deployed. I think this is the last Xeon platform that used standard front-side buses, and here it runs at 1066 MHz. System information, of course, shows the system information, and here you get the manufacturer information, so machine type and model, serial number, and etc. If you go to device and I/O ports, you can configure the 2 serial ports. Right? If you go to F1, it really explains you what the option is for, and even gives you tips. You know, you can change IRQ if you have problems with your internal modem card, for example, and so on. If you go to parallel port setup, you need to remember that before you had different standards, not always they were bidirectional, for example. So computer could send commands to the printer, but not really read if the printer was printing or if it had no paper, or etc. So in the past, you could have a need to set up these options. Remote console redirection is an option that's seen only in servers. So, for example, if I would be installing Linux and didn't have a monitor connected, I could connect a serial cable and just open Telnet in another computer and connect to it. So you can specify the parameters for the serial port, so the rate and flow control, etc. You can also have the serial port still working after post. As I said, you can install Linux, but if you had it, well, when you have it off, you can see the BIOS and the basic setup. I'll try to demonstrate this later, but you cannot see, for example, Linux loading or run a setup or run a terminal, yeah. But if you leave it on, if you have a text mode operating system like DOS, you could still see it via the serial console, handled by the BIOS. Very, very cool. You just have to enable it here, choose the serial port that you want to use, and go for it. Again, F1 gives you information about the options. Internal floppy disk. Starting in 2004, I think, floppy drive started being optional in IBM servers. So this one has a floppy drive controller, but no floppy drive installed, so it is disabled. It's really cool that, again, you get an explanation about what it's supposed to do, and you can just set up as you need. Again, mouse, so I can disable the PS2 port, and the planar Ethernet is actually the onboard Ethernet, but I think IBM calls the motherboard a black backplane, so here you can enable and disable it. And of course you can see the MAC address here. Here you can enable and disable parallel ATA, so if you disable that, Windows should not detect your ATA controller, and that of course disables your CD-ROM drive. This model still doesn't have optic drives running on SATA. You can enable and disable the SATA controller here. I think that's not going to apply to this model because it has the SAS controller, but then you can choose if you want to operate in auto mode, and it really explains that you have the enhanced mode for emulating a PATA disk if you're running an old operating system, and if you're running Windows 2K or newer, then you can just have it enhanced, and it doesn't matter for me, so I'm going to leave it in auto and compatible, or I can just restore defaults. Video again gives you details of the onboard video, so this one doesn't use the video from the CPU, although I think this Conroe Xeon doesn't have this crappy Intel graphics, but the motherboard has an 88 chip with 16 megs of dedicated memory. Date and time. Here you get basically date and time, and it's very specific. You can use the number keys to enter the years, months, and dates. The date is saved as you type it. Brilliant. System security. Here you get option to set up administrative password. That's for the setup menu for the BIOS, and it explains that you cannot use the setup utility if you have this enabled and don't know the password. And power on password, that is to turn the computer on. So you push the power button. So let's suppose you have this in a data center. It guarantees that if someone takes your computer off, then only a certified technician can turn it on. Although I think if you reset the BIOS, then this password then is also reset. But it provides an explanation. It's really cool. Startup option. Now here is where this computer is very cool, and I really appreciate that the explanations are there. So basically, startup sequence option, you have all the devices that are detected. That's why it runs through Ethernet and storage controllers first. So for example, if it detects netboot, then you get the option here like detected a card. Funny thing though, that even though I could have had the USB stick here with an operating system, it would not detect it. This BIOS revision has a bug that doesn't detect USB drives with more than 1 gigabyte. So here I need to actually burn a CD or find a flop disk drive to just be able to update the BIOS to the latest revision, and that should support USB sticks. I cannot find a USB stick that small these days. I have a 32 gigs one, but where most see a problem, I see an opportunity. I'm learning in the meantime to set up a server, PXE server, and I'm gonna try to install Linux this way. Again, it explains what a startup sequence is, and it's really cool. So basically it explained everything here. Also, you can enable disable wake up on LAN, and you have a separate sequence for wake up on LAN. That's of course for servers, maybe the workstations, although I haven't yet had the chance to work with an IntelliStation, an x86 IntelliStation. Maybe they do have the option as well. So basically if I send a magic packet to turn the system on, that's the startup sequence that's gonna use, so it's gonna try to boot from Ethernet first. So for example, if your server is dead or goes to sleep, I'm not sure if you can completely turn it on via PXE, but then it can boot your system recovery server or your remote administration tools, whatever you have. And the fans are coming up. Here you can choose to enable or disable PXE on the onboard Ethernet. You can make the priority higher if you want. Boot device priority, mini PCIe, because I think the SAS control is connected to mini PCIe, but for example I could have a SCSI controller, for example, or another SAS controller or a SATA controller in one of the other slots, and I could then boot from here. Display-less operation is going to allow you to boot without a display card, a graphics card I mean, and it cannot really detect whether or not you have a display connected. So basically, if you wouldn't have an onboard graphics chip in the system, for example workstation, right, it would not crash on boot without a graphics card. Same with keyboardless operation. There is no keyboard connected to the PS2 port, and the system is not halting on post. And it says it's a PS2 keyboard because it's explained here. No lock on by default. Legacy USB support is used for input devices, keyboards, mice, when they are connected to USB. So for example, if you boot DOS to upgrade a BIOS or the firmware of a card, you can still use your USB keyboard and mouse, connect them to the front USB ports, and you'll be able to interact with the system. Then you can allow the system to keep booting on errors instead of halting. If you disable, the system will halt. The explanation here is there. When this option is enabled, if no keystrokes detected within 30 seconds, the system will exit setup and boot the operating system. If disabled, it will continue to wait for the user intervention. It can count how many times it booted, so you can intervene and it gets stored somewhere. Yeah, so if you don't count the boot failures, then you may have problems to find out what the problem is, so you have to reset the BIOS. This option is very useful for servers, so here I keep them off if they're off, on if they are on. But for example, in case of a power outage and I'm not here, I actually want the system to power on automatically, right? Or if I have always someone on site ready to monitor the computers, you can choose actually the server to stay off. And this option here allows you to override the boot sequence without having to go into the setup screen. Advanced setup is meant to be scary, right? So CPU options are gonna, well, enable dual core, otherwise the system is only one core. I think C1 enhanced mode is to save power, and there is a typo here. Maybe this is the BIOS upgrade is gonna have it fixed. You can enable virtualization, so we have Underpool technology was the technical name for that. If you don't have this enabled, the virtualization works on software. The newer versions of VirtualBox don't support software virtualization. I think we need to have virtualization extensions, but I think that's from version 6 above. I don't know, don't quote me on that. Thermal management, so I think if you overheat, computer goes off. Not sure, I was hoping for a better explanation here. And 2 must be version 2, but again I don't know what that means. Execute disable bit, security feature, EIST I think is related to power, yeah, saving power. The processor can go into different sleep states. I keep it enabled because why not? The newest OSs should support it. PCI bus control. I have no idea what the effect of the PCI master latency timer has on system performance. Of course, default setting is the best here. Interrupt routing. Here you can change IRQs. I don't know why you wouldn't use that unless you're running really a legacy operating system. So you see, you disable the IRQ9, you disable the USB 3 there. They are interconnected, they are sharing interrupt request, yeah. But whatever you're running here that hasn't been released in the last 20 years should support plug and play. But if you need to override this, there you go. So let's see. The default setting is auto-configure for each PCI planar device and each possible planar plug-in slot. Auto-configure of the system to optimized and balanced, horrible English, PCI RQ routing and share RQs. After all, available free RQs have been used at least once, so if you have the system really loaded, they will share IRQs. And yes, you can use the override the automatic routing options to resolve conflicts when devices don't share IRQs well. So that's gonna probably be optimized performance. So that's basically, yeah, some old legacy card that doesn't work with plug and play well. There you go. IPMI. So this is the remote management interface. Basically, this has a remote IPMI monitor. I'm gonna try to show it to you later on. And you can turn the server on and off remotely, do certain system configuration changes, probably manage the setup. Maybe there's a remote console option. I haven't seen the IBM one yet. I know the HP one and I use it quite often. So here you have options related to it. I'm not sure what the Pulse Watchdog does, but okay. You can probably intervene in case system fails to pulse remotely. Cool thing is that here you can read the system log, even messages that I stored in the IPMI controller, if that's the correct way to say it. And you can troubleshoot later on. And you can configure your fixed IP address for the IPMI controller. It doesn't seem to support the HCP, and you can log in remotely and manage the system. I have no idea what the default credentials are. I hope this is unlocked so I can show you. And later on I'll probably install a switch upstairs so I can have both interfaces up and manage the system remotely if required. One thing that I miss here that HP supports with this ILO thing is that you can share the interface. So you can have both MAC addresses being broadcast from the same interface, and you can have only one Ethernet wire and run both your operating system and IPMI. NMI, I think NMI is a blue screen, and I think that allows the system to reboot automatically. I'm not sure, don't quote me. And I wish for a better explanation than determine shall automatically reboot the sysme after an MN occurs, whatever. Memory throttling option, I'm assuming that's also for saving energy, I'm not sure. The default is enabled, I leave it enabled. Error logs. It's clear, but you can here see previous error log posts. And then also the system event logs are clear. These are the ones stored in the BIOS, not the ones stored in the IPMI. And that's it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.